what's crazy to me is regardless of how you feel about how the Israeli military and the army is pursuing the war in Gaza, regardless of that, the blatant, just out in the open anti-Semitism.
What's going on, you guys? Today on Joe Rogan is a government puppet. We have Joe Rogan talking to a CIA agent. The Vanguard and Kyle Kalinske are covering it. I'm playing a clip from the Vanguard as well as a clip from the Joe Rogan Experience. Let's get into it.
Criticisms, but I think with some of this Israel and Gaza stuff, he's sort of changed his tune, and specifically as we recently reacted to with Rogan inviting on Gad Saad and Mike Baker, the former CIA agent. Not a good look. Kyle, not very impressed, not very amused, specifically because Rogan is one of these people who likes to pretend that he speaks truth to power and is anti-establishment and all this stuff. Can't really claim that if you're having people like Mike Baker on your pod.
So funny too, because just to make the Bill Burr connection one more time, I remember a long time ago Bill Burr was on the Joe Rogan podcast and Rogan's like, oh yeah, my friend Gad Saad, and Bill Burr's like, what the you have a friend named Gad Saad? And Joe's like, oh yeah, I mean obviously he's like, I don't know where he's from, wherever he's from, and he was like, I don't give a there's not a place on earth where rhyming isn't funny. I've toured all over the world. You say some shit that rhymes, people are going to chuckle at you. Gad Saad. So his parents didn't love him as a child? Like, it just horribly funny stuff. Anyway, that's all. That's what I always
That's hilarious. And we reacted to the Gad Saad video the other day. We also talked about that weird video clip where Gad Saad supposedly admitted to being Mossad. We played it for you guys, reacted to it. Seemingly
he admitted it in his book.
Yeah, and well, that's what he said in that interview. I have done research since then, and supposedly he claims to have been joking. He says he played along during what was a joke in that interview. So, I mean, you guys can decide whatever you want to believe. It didn't seem like a joke in the interview. It was definitely played 100% straight. If it was a joke,
inside joke that I'm the no, dude. Yeah. You can. I'm surprised. I'm very surprised this hasn't been brought up more. Yeah, dude, this is crazy, guys. We played the clip. It's entirely obvious what's happening. He got in trouble for saying the quiet part out loud because he's not as effective of a propaganda artist. Anyway, yeah, the Godfather. Anyway, that's hilarious on him.
Yeah. Anyway, Kyle, like I said, not exactly amused that Rogan chose to invite.
And for those of you who do not know, Gad Saad is, he's just another shill for Israel, actually a pretty big one, and he's going to be one of these guys that's saying, "Oh yeah, Elon's my favorite, Donald Trump's my favorite. They're fighting for free speech," and he actually doesn't know anything. He's just speaking these repeated points, but wants to come across as an expert. But his entire job is to just make people have faith in this fascist movement.
This joker on his podcast during the absolute siege on Gaza, the extermination of basically an entire population that we're watching in real time, sickening stuff, absolute horrors unfolding on a daily basis. And I think that Kyle is 100% correct to kind of call out Joe Rogan for, instead of talking about that and really condemning it in a serious way, instead pivoting to this fake conversation about anti-Semitism, which obviously is a real thing. Obviously no one would deny that. But what is up for debate is whether or not there's actually this spike in anti-Semitism that's occurring right now, or whether or not that's just kind of a distraction technique being
specifically led on college campuses. Now, let's not forget the through line here. Right? What do Joe Rogan, Gad Saad, the Weinsteins, the Sam Harrises, the intellectual dark web, Jordan Peterson, take your pick of the lot. What do they need to stay relevant? What do they just plain have to have for their audience, right? The red meat, the blue-haired liberal on college campuses. Oh, my God, the college campuses. Oh, my God, look at these 20-year-old kids with no power and a load of student debt. Let's talk about how they're the ones that are undermining our entire society. Let's talk about how they're at the precipice of cultural erosion and the fact that, the American dream has died. These kids with no power, I remind you, right? They need that. That's their whole shtick. That they had that, and then they had COVID, and now people don't really give a about COVID anymore, right? Right or wrong. I know there are a lot of people on the left who get extremely mad when people like me and Gavin just say that nobody gives a fuck about it anymore. I'm sorry, but nobody gives a fuck about it anymore. That's wrong. But we have a whole bunch of problems in this country that force people to just kind of get over it, and they have. So what are they doing now? Oh, it's college campuses again? Okay, great. Now we can talk about how there's hysterical anti-Semitism on college campuses. Meanwhile, as we pointed out in the past, when we reacted to this exact clip of Joe Rogan, he doesn't give a fuck about racism. He doesn't give a fuck about problematic behavior. In fact, he bemoans the fact that you can't do that jokingly anymore, right? Oh, everybody's always overreacting about that stuff. Anyway, this is part of their gimmick. This is part of.
If you guys like this video, make sure to like and subscribe for more. I'm not one to interrupt because the Vanguard's making a really important point right now.
They're, buttering their own bread. They know that when they start, screaming and pissing and moaning about college campuses, that they're going to have an audience of invigorated right-wing divorced dads that just can't wait to talk about, this is why my own daughter won't talk to me, et cetera, et cetera.
Exactly. And as I said, usually Kyle kind of puts on the kid gloves when it comes to Rogan. I think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised here. He goes pretty hard, clearly not impressed. So let's take a look.
So Joe Rogan had Gad Saad, am I saying that right? Gad Saad, whatever, on his podcast. And this guy, Gad Saad, he's been like a intellectual dark web adjacent type figure for quite a while. That's how I would describe him. But a lot of people point to this video he made a while ago where he basically kind of admits, like, yeah, I'm Mossad, or I was Mossad, right? For those of you who don't know, that's Israeli CIA. Okay. Kind of sketchy. Okay. But so he comes out and says that. Now, Joe, the episode before this, apparently.
By the way, if I was Joe Rogan, I was going to have that guy on, I would at least ask. I'd be like, hey, so, some people have pointed to this clip of you going around. Let's just clear this up once and for all. Is this true? Are you Mossad? Were you Mossad? What the fuck is going on here? I think that would have been a good question. Unfortunately, I don't think it was asked.
I think best case scenario, it's kind of like one of those dudes that got rejected from the police academy. It's if he's not Mossad, it's because he's like the Dwight Schrute of Mossad. He's like the volunteer deputy sheriff's department guy where they were like, buddy, you didn't pass the entry. Like, we didn't even accept you. Like, sorry, dude, you're not. And he's like, I speak on behalf. And they're like, you don't speak on behalf of us. We don't even like you aren't about this. You like, go back to your beet farm. Like, you know what I mean? I don't know.
Only had on that.
And I know I may come across as a little conspiratorial whenever I bring up the fact that neither side seems like they're very anti-war, especially with this Israel and Palestine conflict. Because, you do see a lot of people, the only ones that are very, very much against it, that I see at least, are very, very far right. And it is a little concerning that, that we may even share some ideologies. But, there's some people in the middle that won't see it until it's too late, that by the time that they do see it, that there's nothing that we'll be able to do about it. Then that we'll be on the ships or on the planes being sent in to go fight a war that has nothing to do with us. So it's one of those things to where you don't necessarily want to agree with the conspiratorials, with the ones that are that root for the no cell phones in the schools because of the brain waves and everything. You don't necessarily want to agree with those guys all the time. But by the time that you have the majority of the public seeing what's going on, it might be too late.
That former CIA agent that he has on all the time, something Baker, I think his name is. And by the way, even Joe acknowledges. Former CIA agent, like, really? Okay.
Exactly.
So I don't know, man. You have back-to-back a CIA dude and then a Mossad dude, right? And then now let's get into some of the parts that everybody's focusing on. So let's start with this. They're talking about anti-Semitism. I couldn't bring myself to listen to the whole podcast, but apparently that was a large part of the podcast, talking about anti-Semitism. And they dropped this gem on us.
What's crazy to me is, regardless of how you feel about how the Israeli military and the army is pursuing the war in Gaza, regardless of that, the blatant, just out in the open anti-Semitism that we see today is like nothing I've ever seen before.
They have no examples.
Like roaches coming out of the woodwork.
Play the tape then,
what?
Joe.
Like, you see it all over social media, and it's like,
Where are
if this is
it's everywhere, play it.
Yeah, I don't even know what he's talking about. Like, I don't even know the clip and reference that he's
It doesn't
supposedly
exist.
talking
It's the same. They filmed it actually at the same school where they make you shit in litter boxes, Gavin. His friend told him.
September and not October. Like if this is just, you would be shunned. Everybody would be like, this is horrible. How the fuck could you say this? How are you? You're openly anti-Semitic. You're openly blaming the Jews for all the world's problems. This is
All the
crazy.
world's problems.
This is
That's
Nazi
crazy.
shit.
No, the
And yet
one
you're seeing
problem
it
that
everywhere
the
now.
country of
When those
Israel is
teachers-
committing, and we're not blaming the Jewish people, we're blaming the country of Israel, and you don't have any examples of actual anti-Semitism, so you just made a couple up.
We're in front of Congress. When those principals of those universities were in front of Congress, and they were saying that it's not harassment to say death to the Jews unless it's actual.
Nobody said death to the Jews.
Which
There's
is
not
the
a single
craziest
piece of that. There's not a
mental,
single
verbal
piece of footage from real college students, and it wasn't presented before Congress. Do you think anybody in their right mind would respond to a video footage of people chanting death to the Jews and say, oh, that's not anti-Semitic? Oh, wait, yes, your guy, Donald Trump, when a bunch of tiki torch.
Yeah, so there we have it, you guys. You know, it doesn't really matter about anything that's going on over there whatsoever. It doesn't matter that the Israeli soldiers are kicking the families out of their own homes and using those as bases. It really, none of that matters because, you know, we can't even express our emotions. We can't even express that, hey, that something doesn't feel right about that. As soon as you express a feeling, now the guilt trip comes. Now it's, oh, so you hate me. You can't even express a feeling. They you know, some more supporters become so difficult to talk to. They don't even let you feel a certain way about it. You can't even have that. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments. It's another day in the progressive way.